Thank you, Tim. I was just observing the dynamic. I'm probably the only foreigner in here. And I'm not from the sector. I'm actually a lawyer. To me, HFCs 2 years ago were high fructose corn syrup because I come from the food industry. So just the point is that I'm seeing it from the outside with the perspective of a global industry body. I just wanted to make a few comments. I think there is a need, from what I see in this group, to validate your technology. That's very important. You have enough cases of efficiency and safety to go and validate even by third parties. And at the end of the day, what we need is to showcase that evidence. I think there's a strong need for marketing, communications, and moreover, training in here. There's a big need in Australia for training, I believe. We need to educate the government through dialogue. I think some of the states are already on board, but there's a need for more engagement in the form of dialogue and convincing. Training technicians, I think it's fundamental. And at the end of the day, what you need to do collectively is create awareness. And for that, I think you need unity, which I've seen unity in this room. I don't know what happens when you leave this room. And that's my big question. You have a resource in here, Tim and the IRA, which I think is in need of more funding and more of a mandate from yourselves to do more things. Take advantage of that. I'm not sure how is everything structured here, but I think you have an opportunity here with someone that is passionate and dedicated. Use him, use the organization, create a better funding structure to do more awareness or to create more awareness. Because at the end of the day, I mean, it's the credibility of the natural refrigerants, I think it's there. But there's a distinction between persuasion to others and then influence. You persuade people, you encourage them to do something once. You sell them an insurance. But influence is a different story because you have to encourage people and organizations to a lasting support, which is precisely what you're after in here. The currency for this influence is trust. And I think you collectively have developed the trust in the sector. So I see no problem whatsoever to go ahead with your technology that is already proven, plus the new technology that is coming. The energy efficiencies are there, performance improvement, cost reductions. It's a success story. I wish I had that for some of the other working groups like soy and palm oil that are struggling to make the case sometimes. So I mean, my only message was stay united. Don't just leave the room and forget about it and continue fighting your own battles when you can have a collective battle that you're going to win. That was my fib.
Thank you, Ignacio.
Thank you. I've got a question for John Fick. You mentioned issues relating to network connection, and I'm just wondering about how negotiations proceed with distributors, given that some of the technology that you're financing for your clients actually benefits distributors. How do negotiations proceed, and do distributors come to the table, and do they provide performance guarantees themselves in terms of connections?
All of our work has been conducted on the with our clients on the load side, although I do note that presently we are in negotiation with some utilities who are vitally interested in network support benefits from the use of the storage and voltage optimization technologies. In those regards, currently we are speaking by invitation to more than one utility about the opportunity to finance and supply dynamic voltage optimization on the, if you like, the grid side. Traditionally, the energy savings have not been in the interest of the utility to support because of, if you like, perverse revenue incentives, as you can understand. Now, typically in Australia, the average percent EBIT to revenue for the utility is about 5%, between 5 and 6% on average across Australia. So to earn 5 cents of EBIT, the utility will push $1 of extra energy to its clients. So there's significant opportunities for gain share. Where $1 of surplus is created, there's a fair bit to go around to the end customer, and more than enough to make the utilities profit whole. So offer them 6 to 10 cents in the dollar forfeited because there's no cost to serve. So these are discussions that are going on at the moment. Now that's purely the economic case. It would help reduce CO2 emissions. It's energy conserving. The utilities have their own further direct needs in terms of voltage support. So in many areas of the country, the swings in voltage and the need to support long lines is quite an issue. And so to defer further infrastructure investments, there's many opportunities to utilise distributed storage, even without PV, but distributed storage to provide reactive power support, which can increase the delivered power of long lines, such as swirl lines, and also enable the voltage swings to be reduced and maintain the voltage within the, if you like, the statutory limits. I hope that helps.
Tim, you're asking for comment around how to drive the progress of natural refrigerants and energy efficiency. Something that's been discussed a bit today is the energy saving scheme in New South Wales. And my experience personally is mainly with HVAC and refrigeration in an industrial setting, and particularly in manufacturing. And in manufacturing, the return on investment that companies are looking for is much shorter or much higher than typically is acceptable in a commercial building environment. So the idea of the energy saving scheme is to provide revenue to offset that initial capital to help drive projects. And I think that's an area that we can take advantage of, but it needs that process of getting accreditation and getting projects happening and generating revenue through the ESS needs planning. So when you've got a significant project, or you want to do a refrigerant drop-in or a complete system overhaul or a new system, you need to allow plenty of time for that process to happen to generate that revenue through the ESS, because you can't implement until the project has been accredited. So it's important to start thinking about that potential revenue stream early on in the project. I think if we can get people thinking about that revenue stream early on in the project, it can convince more people to actually make those capital investments and get these things happening. So that's just the thing that I see holding up HVAC and refrigeration projects, is that return on investment. And if we can get stuff happening with the ESS, but as I said, it takes that planning. You need to have that idea for the revenue at the start of the project.
I agree with that. It has been difficult for the small side of the industry, which is struggling to keep its head above water and struggling to grow at the rate that it wants to and it needs to. It's hard to get ahead of projects in that way. I've been conscious of ESCIs for, I don't know, it must be 2.5, 3 years now, maybe longer. I've been talking with one of the major providers of verification, and frankly, I haven't cracked it. So I think we've agreed with OEH that we'll try harder, and the smartest guy in the room is going to solve it for us. We need to develop ESCIs, but I also think that there are other ways to solve that problem, like using innovative finance mechanisms. But free money is good too, or almost free money is good. Questions? Mr. Jensen.
It's not a question, it's a comment as usual.
Oh no. Here we
There's
go.
one important barrier for change that we haven't really discussed today, and that's the Work Health and Safety Act. My hobby horse.
Yes, it
The
is.
fact is that the Work Health and Safety Act makes mention of a competent person. And in this context of natural refrigerants, there is no clear definition of a competent person in this country. Now that in itself is a problem. The second problem we have is the introduction of the new standard, ISO 5149, which has caused a lot of battles. In my considered opinion, and some of you will disagree, the ISO 5149 standard, which is supposed to replace the existing 1677, is a standard of the HFC industry, by the HFC industry, and for the HFC industry. It is not really suitable for natural refrigerants. It tries to push them out. It tries to sideline natural refrigerants. So there's a strong case to be made for refrigerants that are, or standards that are dedicated to natural refrigerants. And this is where we should be heading. And there is, in fact, a global, or someone who is emerging as a global advocacy for natural refrigerants. And that organisation is HVACR. And the very important development that has happened recently with HVACR, which is the International Institute of Ammonia Refrigeration, is that they have become recognised code developers. So the new ammonia standard, which is called IIAR2, launched in 2015, has the capacity, if applied in this country, has the capacity to reduce the probability of people like me being dragged in front of a magistrate and accused of negligence because I have drained a perfectly safe A1 refrigerant out of a system and put in a very dangerous B2L refrigerant such as ammonia. And this is a very real risk that people like me take every day. We swing our legs out of bed. There is always the chance that a smart aleck lawyer will be saying, Mr. Jensen, how could you even think about taking a perfectly safe A1 refrigerant out of a system and replace it with something that is more dangerous? And this is one of the major barriers. We, with the expertise, we the contractors, with expertise in natural refrigerants, we take all the risk. And the government is like a Teflon frying pan. Everything pearls off on them and we take the lot. We take the heat. And that is a real problem for a lot of people. Thank you.
That is a very important matter that Stefan has been pressing for a long time, and he's right, obviously. There are 20,000 firms in this country, more or less, taking those risks. And I'll get there. And you know, the manner in which that particular factor is treated is really problematic. And I did want to say just one other thing, is that Stefan will be leading our relationship with the International Institute for Ammonia Refrigeration. So we've already been appointed as a chapter for Oceania. And so that's no small thing, and not the least of the reasons being is that we had, I didn't tell him that Stefan's also on the board of directors of the IIAR. Non-trivial that our little country has that level of recognition.
Thank you, Tim. Congratulations, Stefan. I've been very, very slow in recognising this major appointment to the board of IIAR in Washington, D.C. The comment I want to make about standards, I'm so fed up with it that there's a fellow of the British Institute of Refrigeration of recent days. I'm using the British standards, the British Institute of Refrigeration standards, the ammonia one and the CO2 one, for want of better standards in my hands. And being a typical consultant, of course, also, then if I get dragged in front of the magistrate, in your terms, I got a little bit of paper. I said, well, Mr. What do you call it? Your worship, I tried my best. But I'm totally with you. And there is another one that might be of interest, and that is EN 372, the Western European standard, the EU standard. But I'm not certain how much either of those is going to be modified to satisfy 5149. In the meantime, I'll just keep doing it. So I've sat on the ME 006 committee of ERA, of the Standards Association, for 7 years, in the late 70s, early 80s. And I will never ever again, except this time with 5149, sit on a committee that is a never-ending search for compromise. Because one man's bread is another man's poison. You've got these conflicting interests. And I don't think you'll get anywhere. In fact, being a socialist Democrat, or a democratic socialist, I think a lot of these things must be pushed down from the top. By legislation, by regulation, like the carbon tax.
You're really an autocrat.
Well, at my age, why not? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Klaus. All right, you want to talk? Okay, I just want to make this statement. I'm not going to take you through the whole story, but the ARA backed off Standards Australia in a big way late last year, and we've just done it again. Had we not taken the initiative, it would not have been done, and the Synthetic Refrigerants Alliance would have snuck through a standard that was for them, by them, however you said that so brilliantly.
Just a little quick thing. To show how hard it is, when I first started in the trade, not only was there vertical twins widely used in the ammonia industry, but I used to saddle up the pack horse with 3 refrigerants, 502, 22 and 12, and life was good. And occasionally we might have R11, which was a little bit sort of unusual, you know, but for us in the country, in the city it might have been a bit more. But just here, an article off the web, Switzerland, new reports reveals that at least 80 refrigerants currently in use or under consideration to replace the existing high GWP refrigerants. Now, my poor little horse would need a massive cart to carry all that stuff around with him. But importantly, and this is kind of where I'd like to sort of address, you know, the group, and this is where people like Michael and Dario and Woolworths and Coles have a lot of weight to help our industry, and I'm asking them to help our industry in that area, because government won't listen to little people until a lot of little people get together and they finally do listen. But the weight of the industry certainly has a lot of power behind it, and that's the support that we're looking for from within the organisations. The major industries, you know, the Swires, the Oxford Coal Stores, the you know, the Aldis, the Woolworths, the Coles, the IGAs. They're the people that can help us move forward, impressing government to make the change. And we go back to Denmark, who made the change. And the sky didn't fall. They survived. The beer didn't get cold. The butter didn't melt. And everything still works quite fine. We can do it. And they became the leaders. We had an opportunity placed at our feet. Whether you like it or don't like it with Gillard, she gave us a very short time to do it in, but nevertheless she pushed the button to push us forward. And we threw that away.
Any other volunteers? Yeah, go ahead, Warren.
Yes, Tim, just back to your call to action. Just got a quick comment to make and a suggestion. I live in Goulburn and my local member is Angus Taylor. I don't know if anybody's heard of Angus Taylor. He's a Liberal member. But what's significant about him is that he's a young bloke and I think he's a rising star in the Liberal Party machine, and he's passionate about the environment, and I had a talk to him about, I suppose, about 18 months ago. But the significant thing about him is that he's assistant to Greg Hunt. And if you wanted to get to Greg Hunt, this is a good way to do it. So if you want to come down one day, I can set up a meeting with you to speak to this Angus Taylor.
And I appreciate the offer. You know, I've spoken to Greg Hunt on a number of times. Last night, I was speaking to Mark Butler, who's the opposition environmental spokesman. We need to keep doing it, but when I do that, I'm kind of what Ian said. I'm the little guy. And I'm not DuPont, I'm not Honeywell, I'm not Refrigerants Australia or ERA. ERA gets all kinds of recognition, which is ill-deserved in my view. And so it goes back to what Ian is saying. I feel like we're begging here. Maybe we are. If we're going to make a difference, it has to happen together. And I will take you up on that. Thank you, gentlemen. I really want to thank you. I want to thank Peter Evans, who has worked tirelessly to make this happen. It has been really hard because this industry is hard to get to, one. Countries in economic malaise, two. And there's been a lot of competing activity, you know. So it was not, in many ways, not a great time. I don't think there is any great time. But Peter worked tirelessly to make this happen. And I want to thank all of the smart people in this room, including the speakers, for helping this. And thank you for coming. Let's make a difference.